that's what I'm going to do. And then, let's see, my desktop fortunately so will be there. All I have to type is USF. Here we are.
Okay, so maybe we start and while,
Sure.
there's another seminar so they probably join us later.
Certainly. However you'd like to do that is great. Once I've got that, I'll get some good shape.
Okay, great. Thank you for coming to this special session. And this is a busy afternoon because we have 3 seminars in a row. So we have somebody from FDOT District 7 come to talk about the future construction projects in Tampa. And then we have a researcher or scholar coming to talk about connected and automated vehicles. And that seminar is still going on. It's going from 2 o'clock to 3:30. So while we're waiting for more audience to join us, let me introduce our third speaker today, which is Mr. Odell. And he's the project manager from Texas DOT. And specifically, he's with the Research and Technology Implementation Division. So Wade oversees transition research projects in half a dozen functional areas, which covers a lot, including construction and maintenance, planning, environmental, safety operations, structures and hydraulics, and strategy and innovations. And he's a registered PE in Texas, and he holds his a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and also master's degree in engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. And he has worked about 33 years. At the Texas DOT. So please join me to welcome Mr. Wade Odell.
Thank you for this kind welcome. Just a brief story before I go into this, before I go into the presentation. This was actually never on the radar in the first place. I knew that I was going to be coming to Tampa to attend a traffic safety services Association expo and convention starting Sunday morning, and I decided to come to Tampa a little bit earlier because there's a lot of logistical reasons why I decided to come in on Friday, but I didn't want to miss half a day of that conference on Sunday. So I thought, okay, well I'll just come in on my, come in on my own dime, stay here, and then then I would be able to make the conference. But then I saw you at the AV 060. That's Transportation Research Board Standing Committee on Aviation, of which she's the chair. And I had a few dealings with her in the past because one of her former grad students that got a PhD is now at Texas Tech University, and I work with her. I work with a former PhD student occasionally there. Anyway, so there's this connection. Anyway, she said, so if you're coming in on Friday, we have seminars on Friday afternoon, and I understand that people have these seminars on Friday afternoon because they don't have anything else better to do. But we're really glad that y'all could be here. So yes, I'm going to talk about the TxDOT research. I don't think that there's really anything there that you left out concerning my background. But yes, I do have 2 degrees in civil engineering from the University of Texas. And you notice I did add the word in Austin, but UT branch. The UT flagship campus is at the university, is in Austin, so we just call it UT. If you're in El Paso or San Antonio, it's UTEP, UTSA, UT Arlington is UTA, so they all have their monikers, we have ours. We're Texas. But that's not what you want to hear me talk about. You want to hear me talk to you about the TxDOT research program. Before I get into that, I do want to find out, y'all are either researchers or you are doing work with faculty doing assisting in research. How many of y'all have current research projects, transportation research projects going on with your current, say with the Florida DOT or any other organization? Okay, well we've got 3 here in the room. All right, so honestly, for some universities, state DOT research is the backbone of their program. If TxDOT wasn't there. A lot of things that major research institutions, I can speak with respect to Texas, wouldn't be on the map as much as they are because of the work that they actually do for the state DOTs. I know that when I was a grad student at the University of Texas, my research was also involved in a Texas Department of Transportation sponsored research project. That was on signalization. I did start out in traffic operations, 17 years in the traffic operations division, and going on 17 years it will be in May that I'll have with the research division. So let's talk about our program, and I want to give you all some, I do want to give you all some numbers. First of all, Texas is a big state, and you all know that. Not that Florida is a teeny tiny state either. We have 254 counties in Texas. We have our Texas Department of Transportation is broken up into 25 different districts that are responsible for maintaining and operating their highways in different geographical areas, all the way far west from El Paso to Beaumont, from Amarillo down to Pharr. And yes, Pharr, P-H-A-R-R. And here's Austin, so it is Pharr. But each of these 25 districts are responsible for maintaining and operating their highways, and there are geographical differences in each part of the state that make them sometimes unique to needing research to do what they need to do. For instance, if you come out to El Paso, if you come out west here, up to the Panhandle, you know, you're lucky to get 9 to 12 inches rain a year. But in the east, routinely, they get 40 inches of rain a year. So they have their own issues. Up in the Panhandle, you've got snow, lots of snow sometimes in the wintertime. So they have their own issues that they have to deal with winter weather operations, whereas down in the south part of Texas, in South Texas, you have anywhere that ranges between humid to dry heat, and you've got, and it's warm a good part of the year. Not that it doesn't get cold. Currently today in Austin, it's 33 degrees and we're expecting some sleet. So it's not always warm and sunny getting, just like I have the expectation here in Tampa that it's sunny year round here. You explained to me that y'all had a little cold spell the other day. So, all right, so I got to give you an idea of how big Texas is. And here are some names of people. You see my name, you see James and the other folks. We've got 25 districts, we've got 5 project managers. Each of us is responsible for doing district visits and asking them about what they want in the research program, and we do this once a year. I go out to El Paso and Odessa, San Angelo, which is here, that's actually my hometown, and we go, and I actually go out and I ask them, so how are you guys with research? How do you want to get involved in the research program? What can we do for you? What problems do you guys have? And as I said, San Angelo doesn't have the same issues, say, that Houston does. Well, what else? I mean, I told you, it's a big state, but what about our involvement in national research? Well, currently, to date, you can see how many standing committee members we have. That's not a bad number. And I'm talking, that's per individual, and several individuals like me are on more than one TRB committee. So so that could comprise 32 people, and I think it's something like close to 40 something actual standing committees that we're actually on altogether when you take into account the multiple committees that one individual may be on. NCHRP, excuse me, NCHRP panel members. This is what we have currently again, and again, we make it a point every year to make sure that we're involved in the National Highway Cooperative Research Program that's sponsored by Transportation Research Board, as well as the NCHRP Synthesis Program. In fact, today, for us, at least with respect to Texas, I sent out a blast statewide for problem statements for the NCHRP synthesis problem statements, and so I'm going to kind of look forward later on to see what actually has been received, and it'll be interesting. And then we review them, and then we send them to Washington to get put into the fray. Transportation Pool Fund Technical Contacts. there are a lot of transportation pool fund projects. We call them pool fund, TPF, call it whatever you want. That's where several states get together. They ask, the Federal Highway Administration has a problem, or say TxDOT has a problem. It says, hey, we'd like to get 8 states involved, or 10 states involved, or how many other states we could get involved, and each of you contribute $25,000 or $30,000 to look at this problem, because the states are pooling their funds to make this research project happen. Currently, there is a project, a pool fund project that Washington DOT is leading. The Texas A&M Transportation Institute is the lead research group, and there are 21 states, 20 states and 1 Canadian province pooled into this roadside safety project. So we have a lot of involvement there. How many people did we send to the Transportation Research Board annual meeting? Well, I know 64 registered. I don't know if all went, but that was one of the things with me too, was keeping up with how many people went. And we had I think that's TxDOT's biggest turnout ever. So if you were at the Transportation Research Board annual meeting in Washington and you saw Texas Department of Transportation name badge, chances are, you would have run into them here or there. We were all over the place. In fact, the only state that has a larger transportation research program than Texas is California. And that's why I said Texas is one of the largest, not the largest. And they only sent like 20 people. In fact, I was speaking to somebody from Caltrans about this and made a remark about how, gee, it just didn't look like that there were enough folks from Caltrans attending this conference. And the lady I spoke to sounded a little bit, sympathetic, about the situation and all that. And so I asked her a couple of more questions, and it turns out she's actually the executive director of Caltrans. Well, I found out from somebody that's in their research division that they're actually going to send more people next year, because I told them how many people we sent. We're going to see how that plays out. Oh, I also forgot to mention SHARP 2. Now, the SHARP 2 Implementation Assistance Program, that's basically over, but there were 7 rounds of SHARP 2, Strategic Highway Research Program that was funded by Federal Highway Administration, and there were a lot of different fields to actually be involved in on that, and I know that we were involved in at least 12. I mean, when you consider that there were 7 rounds, and sometimes Texas got a project selection and sometimes they didn't, getting 12 in 7 rounds, it's not too shabby. All right, so let's talk about our research program on a more local level now. We have about $22 million for research, $5 million for implementation. Implementation includes traditional implementation, which I say, what does this mean? Well, this means that you do research, you got a problem, you do the research, you come up with a solution, and then you implement it. Now, it can be implemented in one of several ways. It can just be that whatever it was that was developed can just be taken and it can be developed into a TxDOT standard. Like in our roadside safety program, I know that a lot of work that we do in research, testing out different kinds of barriers, they take those designs, and if they work, they immediately implement them into it gets immediately implemented into a TxDOT standard for installation on our highways in the future. We've got, but we also have other things where we've got a technology and we want to see how it works in the field. And you're going to see some of the stuff in a moment. Some of the work that we're doing where we're talking about value-added research, meaning that you spend a certain amount of money on the research project. Well, how much money are you getting back? What are we saving TxDOT? So this is something that y'all will be seeing in just a moment. We've got everyday counts. That's another Federal Highway Administration program. Currently, they're in round 5. Now, you would actually have to go to the website to look at what EDC everyday counts is and all that, but if you look at round 5, you'll see various items and stuff. I know one that we are going to be funding for round 5 is going to be what we call weather savvy roads, coming up with technology to be able to determine how to safely, how a road reacts. When I say road reacts, like in snowy and icy conditions and rainy conditions, we've got technologies that can send information, and that's what I mean by how it reacts, how it can send information to the driver through technologies to be able to let the driver know just how safe the road is to actually maneuver. We did complete one project on that in EDC 4. We've got it, but it hasn't been the report hasn't been published yet. But I hope that you all get an opportunity to see that as soon as it is published. We've got the STIC, the State Transportation Innovation Council. This is a group of folks from all around the state that represent various agencies, not just transportation related. I mean, they come from the Texas Farm Bureau, and they come from the universities. They come from the Texas Department of Public Safety, which is our, like your Florida Highway Patrol. We have Federal Highway Administration involved. We've got a bunch of different agencies that are involved. Let me see, MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations we have involved. The biggest one being the North Central Texas Council of Governments, which takes into account Dallas and Fort Worth. It's like an 18-county region up in North Central Texas. And again, these folks are involved in helping us decide what kind of research we want to, not research, but what kind of ideas we want to explore. It can't be research because it's in the implementation program. And so, for instance, we've got a project through the STIC that is, it's called Data-Driven Safety Analysis. Now, that is something that supplements the Highway Safety Manual, the Strategic Highway Safety Manual, and right now TTI is developing different countermeasures, crash modification factors, just to determine what, in the Beaumont district alone, just to determine what kinds of factors contribute to crashes and fatalities, and how we can overcome these issues. The other thing that I also want to talk about very, very briefly is the Local Technical Assistance Program. These are the folks that go around and they have people like, well, if I was not working for TxDOT anymore, but they have folks that work for previously for state DOTs, other folks involved in transportation, field folks, and they go out to cities, they go out to counties, and they talk about, they instruct on how to safely use flagging devices, on how to safely set speed limits, on how to safely do things out in the field that a lot of local governments really don't have the opportunity to do without LTAP being available to come out there and actually show them, instruct them in various things. I also want to show you that we do approximately 60 new projects every year. This year, we nailed it. We've got 60 new projects that are either or have been RFP'd, that's requested for proposals. We had one round where we had pre-proposal meetings for 30 projects on Tuesday, and in March we're going to set out another RFP for another 30 projects. So we've got, as I said, we've got a lot of projects, and we don't want to try to set them all in motion in 1 year. We want to kind of do it in stages. And we've got approximately, in addition, what I should have said was in addition to the 60 new projects that we get, we have about 70 projects that carry over from year to year. And so we've got about 130 projects in flight from year to year. And so, as I said, we have a lot going on, and that's just with respect to research. With implementation, we probably have another 20-something projects going on. So we partner with a lot of universities, a lot. But here are the big dogs, and these are the big universities that we're talking about. Texas A&M Transportation Institute, Center for Transportation Research at the University of Texas. Between these two universities, they have about 70% of the research projects that are done. But these are big universities. Texas Tech. They're the #3 research institution in Texas. So between those three universities, they've got about 80% of the workload, because again, Texas A&M Transportation Institute, TTI, that's all, a lot of their researchers, that's all they do. Most universities have faculty, and the faculty are researchers. Well, at TTI, a lot of these folks are just, they are researchers, and this is all they do, and that's how they're set up. But if you look at the other universities that make up the remainder of the 20% of the program between TTI, CTR, and Texas Tech, they are also, a lot of these are underutilized universities, and we gladly like them to participate. But of course, it's not just a matter of participation just for the sake of letting them participate. They also have to be able to show that they can do the work. And if they put together a good enough proposal, they will get the job.
So wait, are these textile IFPs open to universities outside the Texas?
Only in Texas,
Only in
and state-supported Texas universities, no private universities. Southern Methodist University, Rice, Texas Christian University. If you're a private university, the only time that we would allow a private university in Texas to be able to, or an out-of-state university to be able to participate in the program, is if another university, public university in Texas, cannot do the same job. In fact, we had University of Connecticut on one research project recently that worked secondary to Texas Tech, a wind-related project, and they had developed a unit that mitigates vibration in traffic signal heads. And because of the work that they did, we wanted to see how well that would work with the research program. And so they had done that work, and so they were able to. So we were able to allow them to be the secondary university and not a public university.
You know, it's a different story here in Florida.
How do you all do it?
I mean, FDOT IFPs are open to all the universities, all the institutions across the nation.
Yeah, well, right, and I saw the same thing for Wisconsin DOT recently. They sent out an email, it went nationwide.
Yeah.
And yeah, well.
So what happened is TTI
Yeah,
actually got
I mean,
lots of
TTI
projects.
Yeah.
Got a lot
So
of
Texas
projects.
should open to us as well.
Well, that's a, you know, that's obviously good. That's obviously a good point. You and I keep thinking, you know, I think about universities like Texas Southern University, and they get a project or two every couple of years, and I would have a hard time explaining to E, who's the chair of the transportation program at Texas Southern University, why did, you know, how University of South Florida got a project that they could have done. I don't know. I'm just kidding, of course, but I mean, we've got enough universities in the program that that we feel like we're able to. And yeah, you're right. TTI does get a lot of projects, and there is competition. There is competition out there. I mean, when we turn the request for proposals loose, we're doing our, you know, we really are doing our best to ensure that that the best universities get the proposals. And we don't, and I don't know if it's necessarily a state statute, but we do not sole source. In fact, I'm thinking the last time we actually sole sourced a research project, it's been a long time. But we don't sole source. So I don't know if that works in Florida the same way.
What I said was more joking, but I do have a question. So when you said, so it looks like the university in other states, they could be like
Yes, well, and yes, that can happen. Honestly, if, now, there is one thing that is not negotiable, that the lead university has to be a Texas public university. But it wouldn't surprise me if a university here, a public university, came up with an idea and worked with y'all. For instance, I'm just going out on a limb. Say, let's say Texas Tech came up with an idea, is writing a proposal and for say an UAS system, for an unmanned aerial vehicle system, and they know what you guys can do, and no one else in a public forum in a public university in Texas could do that, then we would be able to allow something like that. But until I mean, it's very simple. We will not allow a proposal to come in where the public university is not the lead university.
So
We have had.
basically, you have to, so the team or the prime university has to justify saying they couldn't find anybody else
Right.
in the state. Wow.
Right, yeah, they would have to do that, that's correct. And the out-of-state university is not, they would not be, like we call them secondary universities and third universities and so forth. They would be a subcontractor to the lead university, so it would be up to the lead university to pay you guys directly and not TxDOT paying you all directly.
That's right. Yeah, because I think Florida DOT sometimes even for the IFP saying like only open to the Florida university, but they are very flexible of having the subcontractor from other states.
Mhm.
So like you don't have to justify saying because I couldn't find anybody in Florida, so I have to work with TTI or work with Texas Tech or whatever.
Mhm.
So I think in this way, Florida is very open to other states.
Well, and honestly, that's not a bad thing. Obviously, I say things, well, that's out of my experience. But as I said, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But in Texas, obviously, it is what it is. And we do have our criteria now. But Oklahoma State has been a subcontractor to a research project. As I said, University of Connecticut's been a subcontractor. Oregon State's been a subcontractor. So we have had, as I said, we've had some of that input. Nothing, I'm sure, like y'all do. Let me see. Oh, that's it. All right. Here's who we are. I kind of gave you guys the size of the university and who we are and what we do and how we move things. Here are the project managers, and these are the responsibilities we have. Our portfolio manager, contract specialists, and resource support, like folks that are account specialists and so forth. And these are the people on this chart that keep this $27 million research and implementation program going. I mean, yes, it's a bunch of names and so forth, people that you don't know except for me, but we keep. This is kind of our group. We're a small group, but we and not only do we deal with a lot of money, deal with a lot of projects, but we also deal with our administration a lot. So I mean, we have senior managers, senior directors and stuff like that often coming to us to ask us for information on research. All right, now this is kind of how things start. Someone comes up with an idea. I'd like to see this. I wish that we could do this. Well, we're having problem with this payment. Well, gee, we're having trouble keeping drones in flight in windy conditions. So that's the spark. So once or twice a year, we collect ideas from around the state. We send out a blast to all of the universities, the public universities, to their liaisons, saying, get with your researchers. Oh, and they also send it to TxDOT folks, and they say, send us your ideas, we want to see. Last year fiscal year, we had 300 research ideas, 300 problem statements that we got from divisions, districts, and universities. It goes through a evaluation project. And I said over 300, 290, that's pretty close. But they go through, and in the next slide you're going to see, in fact, if you saw my intro, you saw this kind of this spiral sort of step process of what we do. And we go through an intense evaluation project to ensure that these problem statements that we reserve are good enough to be part of our research program. All right, so again, here's the call for the problem statements. The problem statements are submitted, and after they're submitted, they go through a two-step review process from the functional area committees, as I said, as you had mentioned earlier. Construction and maintenance, we have subject matter experts in that area, and they look at the problem statements. Planning and environmental, safety and operations, structures and hydraulics, strategy and innovation. Each one of those 5 functional areas have subject matter experts, and they look at the problem statements that come in, and they determine, they rate them, they look at them, and they go through a rating process. And then once they're rated, then they go through our research oversight committee. That is a group of folks, and I'm talking high-level administrators, that look at this list of 290 projects, and we've got them listed. We've got after they've been rated by the functional area committees, and they do a further review process, and they say, okay, out of this many projects, this many, and this time out of 290, we have 60 research projects that are going forward for RFP. Once that happens, then we send out a request for proposals to all of the state universities, public universities in Texas. They are currently in a proposal writing process right now, and we're going to be receiving those proposals in March. Once they are submitted by the universities, we will send them to the TxDOT subject matter experts for them to review. Now, each, like in an NCHRP panel, each TxDOT research project has what I call a project monitoring committee, subject matter experts, call it whatever you want. Anyway, we have about 5, 6 people on each project, and they will evaluate the projects according to certain scoring criteria, how well the proposal's written, does it meet the design objectives, is the money for what they're doing, is the money good, what about the time, and all this is going to happen, and then they're the ones that do the evaluation, and then after the evaluations are sent in, we see the scores, we are able then to make a selection of the best rated proposal for each project. You know, a familiar process for some of y'all.
Hi, wait.
Yes, you.
Are those subject matter experts or TxDOT's employees?
Yes.
Internally?
Yes, exactly. That's what we meant by tech. Well, I know there's a dash, but actually, yes.
Is that the same as the functional area committees?
The functional area committees are composed of TxDOT people and the universities. But when we do the rating, when we meet in a big room, you know, you could have 30, 35 people in the room. When we meet in the big room and we go over the problem statements and we have the opportunity to discuss them, then they are rated, and they're rated only by the TxDOT folks. The university people can be there and comment too. They can explain why this is a good problem statement, why it should go forward for RFP, why it's worthy of going forward. But ultimately, only TxDOT folks, from the functional area committee reviews, the two-step process, the research oversight committee is all TxDOT, as I said, senior managers. Now the project review board, the executive committee, that's two guys downtown, two of our assistant executive directors that look at the list that we send them, and they usually say, oh, this is okay, or they may have a question about one particular problem statement or something like that. But generally, those things go forward, and then we convert the problem statement into a project statement. The project statements, our project statements do not include project length, and they do not include budget, because we want to see how diverse the universities send in their proposals. I don't want 6 proposals that are all 2 years at $240,000. They can really, some of them can be 1-year proposals, some of them may be 2-year proposals. Some of them may be, $100,000, $60,000, some of them may be $250,000. And then, we go forward from there on that. But I don't want to receive a bunch of proposals that are all the same length and budget. So when we have our pre-proposal meetings, I always say, don't ask me 2 questions. Don't ask me how long is the project, and don't ask me what the budget should be for the project, because that's up to them as proposal writers, as professional researchers. That's something that they have to figure out in their own world. Now, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, the only time we make an exception for that are synthesis projects. Synthesis are now, the way it's worded, no longer than 12 months and no more than $65,000. And I can bet you anything that I'm going to get proposals from everybody that's 12 months and $65,000.
One question, all the ideas that in the step 3, that for project select, is all of this idea or project should be requested RFP, or some of can directly issue to university?
Well, again, you have to remember that in step 3. Now, again, this project selection is different from proposal selection. Project selection is just selecting the research ideas, the problem statements, to become project statements to go for RFP. So, see, that's the thing that's the important thing to remember here. So, we, again, we basically leave it up to the devices of the input from our subject matter experts, from our functional area committee members that are subject matter experts, to be able to give us the evaluations. And it's like on a 1 through 5. They rate each problem statement 1 through 5. And then, and it's really up to them to drive this, to tell us what's what.
For example, a university submit just an idea, and this idea,
Right.
Is selected. Yeah, this is good.
Well,
we need this university to take the project directly, or what do they need?
Well, that's the other thing, and I hope I'm answering your question. It's not unusual for a university to ask somebody from TxDOT to submit the problem statement, because they have the idea that, oh, TxDOT submitted this. Well, then this is important,
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
probably Jenny's question is more about, so this is like your research project.
Yes.
And to go through this process. But on top of this, do the offices of Texas DOT work directly with university on some of the problems, some of the
Okay.
research
Yes,
problems?
yes, they do. Yes, they
What
do.
is the percentage in terms of?
I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I do know situations, for instance, where, for instance, in the Houston district, there may be a structural issue, and it wouldn't surprise me if the head structural guy in the Houston district, if Yongcheng Ken Lin, if he will go to the University of Houston and he'll ask Dr. Mo to can you help us with this? What can we do? How can we write this in a way to send this to TxDOT to be reviewed, and to be rated high enough. So you do have the folks that are in the districts, and you do have the folks in the divisions that are working with researchers behind the scenes. Now, once the request for proposals goes out, once we send out the call for proposals, that's it. There's what we call a cone of silence. The universities and TxDOT, they can't talk to each other. If they've got questions, if they have questions, then they have to submit after our pre-proposal meeting, then they have to submit it in writing. And then once they submit it in writing, then they, I'm thinking out loud for a moment, they submit it in writing to TxDOT, to us, and then we send the question to the subject matter experts, and then they respond to us. If one university asks a question, all 20 universities get an answer. So every university, whether they're proposing or not, are in on this question. So yes, so they do work a lot, and once the proposals are selected and the project is awarded, then we go through a process where we review. Let me look at that. Then we go through a process where we do a project agreement review and make sure everything's in order. The whole process takes approximately 14 months. June of the previous year until September of the following year, say June of 2018, well, those problems are going to become, are going to actually going to fruition, say, in September of 2019. Now this year, we've accelerated it to try to get things started in May of 2019. So it's still about approximately 12 months from the time that we first asked for research problem statements, research needs. So then what? Well, we have the research. What do we do with it? How's it going forward? I talked to y'all a little earlier about implementation. Well, how can we do something successfully? We need to talk to the districts and we need to talk to the divisions about getting something successfully implemented, particularly with respect to technologies that deal with the field in construction projects. Now, let's talk about, and this is what we're going to be getting into in a moment, the research program successes. This is a pretty good shot of the Fred Hartman Bridge that goes over the Houston Ship Channel. Up until 10 years ago, this was the most expensive single construction project ever in TxDOT history back in the 80s, like it was over $1 billion. But, so what are some of the things that we can do to show whether a project's been a success? And remember, I'm only showing you a small handful of the projects that we've been able to do over time. We had a research project where we're doing what's called very thin overlays. You know, normally asphalt pavement is about 1.5 to 2 inches thick. Well, can we make it thinner and still have the same kind of performance on a roadway? And through a process, through implementation and through some creative methods, we were able to reduce the asphalt thickness in these districts up here that I'm showing you there, and that results in an approximate savings of about $50 million a year. This savings comes in the form of less material. It comes in, less time out on the construction site. I mean, all of this stuff adds up. But statewide, and we're talking statewide, TxDOT probably saves about $50 million a year in construction or materials costs because of this kind of project. We situation up in North Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth area, and some parts towards Central Texas, where we've got this stuff in the soil called sulfates. And sulfates cause the soils to expand. And when it expands, it creates cracks in the road surface. It causes the road surface to heave, to push up. And that results in high costs. You actually have to go back. It's not a matter of just repaving the surface. You actually have to go back out there and you've got to tame the road surface. You've got, we've come up with certain types of solutions that we put into the soils to create, to help mitigate this asphalt heave and to mitigate cracking in the roadway. And by stabilizing these high sulfate soils, we're able to reduce the number of full depth construction projects. Full depth means taking it all the way down to the subgrade and going out and paving it and doing all the road work and stuff like that. It's just not a matter, as I said, of taking off the old asphalt surface and putting on something new. You've got to go down to the bottom, and that's a problem. So it reduces the number of projects. It's enhanced safety, of course, because the road doesn't have undulations, it doesn't have heave. And we figured, and they said at least $75 million a year in annual savings for TxDOT. Not bad for a $400,000 3-year project. You know, a one-time cost, well, a 3-year cost of $500,000, and an annual savings of $75 million. So yeah, we're really proud of that. I've never driven this device before, but I know people that have. This is called, well, you can see it's called TeePad. It's a pavement acceptance device, a technical pavement acceptance device, and it gathers data. And remember, as I said, we are talking about different geographical parts of Texas. And it gathers certain data, and it allows us to be able to monitor what's going on within the roadway surface to determine how we maintain basically the roadway, how we ensure that it's getting the proper pavement life. Now, I don't have a dollar value for you here, but because of the data that we have here, or that we have collected from this machine, we have been able to, again, determine the pavement life. We've even been able to go out as far as letting the pavement life go further, which of course saves money because you're not spending as much time constructing that stretch of road that you would have done that before. It seems like that a lot of these things that you're seeing here are all field equipment and pavements, but you know, honestly, if you go to a roadway construction project, 70% or even 75% of your roadway construction project is right-of-way preparation, roadway preparation, and pavement and paving. So obviously, it's important that you've got other costs for signs and other sorts of things, but you know, you've got to make sure that your road surface is taken care of. This is one of my favorite. This is a project that we started several years ago to look at developing countermeasures for mitigating, for reducing wrong-way movements. There is a real problem in San Antonio with wrong-way movements. There have been numerous, over 100, not just, or 100, hundreds of wrong-way incidents, some of which have been fatal. So the researchers came up with different ideas so that they could come up with, well, what kind of technologies can we deal with that will let the drivers know that they're going the wrong way? Well, San Antonio, where this has been the issue. They saw 30% reduction in wrong-way driving incidents. They estimate that they've probably saved, I don't know about saving, but they have certainly mitigated the number of injury crashes. They think by over 100. They said 135 crashes they believe have been prevented because of the wrong-way incident mitigation techniques that they have. And of course, being a traffic operations guy, this one was particularly near and dear to me. This is a relatively new one. Another device here to help with roadway construction. This is called the full depth reclamation machine, and I can't really get into a whole lot of detail on it because I really don't know much about it, but I will tell you this. Since they started fracking in Texas years ago, with the energy sector coming the way it has, there have been a lot of trucks, oversized, overweight trucks on our farm-to-market roads, our secondary roads, that are designed to take pickup trucks and passenger cars. And now all of a sudden, they're taking axle loads of over 130,000 pounds. That's a lot of I mean, one of those loads is the equivalent of like 80,000 passenger car passes in one shot. It's a lot. And they wreck the roads. They cause potholes. They basically destroy, they destroy the roads. So this particular technology is coming in to help rebuild the roads. And because of this machine, and again, I can't tell you exactly how it works, except as I said, it does a full depth. It goes all the way down to the subgrade, and it goes through this system here, and it will create it will create a new road surface. And so $140,000 per lane mile, that's a lot of money. So you can see that just what I'm demonstrating here is that with all of these technologies that we have, we are able to spend a few $100,000 on a research project that has the potential to save TxDOT millions of dollars a year. And that in itself makes it worthwhile. Now, this is an interesting curve that we have here. This was something that the Federal Highway Administration put, but it has to do with adoption of technologies, where we are, where TxDOT should be in this. We would prefer to adopt earlier than later, just as I think that a lot of universities or other state DOTs would like to do. The question comes up is that, when is it reasonable to adopt? I mean, how can you adopt early in the stage if you don't even know what the outcome of the research is going to be? So, the purpose of this curve is to kind of give an idea of where most state DOTs stand in terms of adopting technologies from research. We would prefer to be here. I say prefer to be here because we would like to be able to, obviously, if we're going to be a good research program, and I like to think that we're a good research program, we also want to show the country that we are good at being able to adopt technologies practically. So, I did misspeak when I said we want to be here because we would actually prefer to be there. So, this is kind of what it kind of shows us is that the practitioners are adopting technologies late when we could be adopting the technologies earlier through implementation. Well, yes, we can do that. Of course, again, you have to have something. You have to have a research outcome that is implementable. And if you can see it going in that direction, then that's good. And that's basically the end of my presentation. Again, the whole purpose for me being here, and thank you again, you for having me, and for those of you to attend my session. You know, I always thought that I should put a little bit of animation into my slides to make things, you know, dancing letters and stuff like that. But I just wanted to give you guys a plain vanilla idea of what TxDOT is trying to do and where we're headed in terms of research. And y'all have actually asked us some very good questions. I would be very interested again, in taking the, taking the question about other states' involvement in out-of-state universities, say, being involved in our program and so forth. But again, it would be interested. But this is, by the way, this is the first time that I've actually been to an out-of-state university to talk about the program. And I certainly hope that y'all have enjoyed it and gotten some good stuff out of it. Besides the questions that y'all already asked, and I appreciate you doing that, do y'all have any other questions about the research program? Or did I oh, so I knew I couldn't get away, could I? No, please.
So wondering how much funding goes to the highway and traffic safety overall from your observation?
We used to have dedicated budgets for each functional area, and we stopped doing that a long time ago. But I can't tell you an exact number. We used to have out of $18 million. We used to have $4.2 million funded for safety and operations. I mean, construction and maintenance, because they were involved in payments and stuff like that, they had over $5 million funded. But we were well funded, and that was particularly good. And out of the 60 projects that we have that are being RFP'd, first in stage 1 is 30 projects, and then, as I said, in March we'll do another 30. Trying to do 60 one time, it's a lot. So we had, I would say that safety and operations probably gets a good 25% of, or even 30% of that budget, because we have, we seem to get more safety and operations projects going forward for RFP than we do any other functional area. Now, once you start getting into costs for structures and hydraulics and costs of projects for construction and maintenance, they obviously are bigger dollar numbers because they're big things.
Okay. In Texas, do you have any research project ongoing or in future research about the autonomous vehicle and the connected vehicle?
Oh boy, do we. Yeah, no, we do. Yes, we do. In fact, to my mind, I have one, I'm managing a project now that's looking at automated vehicles, connected transit. In fact, this is an interesting thing that you asked. You asked about all this, and I can tell you that there's probably half a dozen projects going on in some sort in automated and connected vehicles. And also, here's a name from TxDOT that you may or may not know, Zhangming Ma. I don't.
Yeah.
You know Zhangming. Well, Zhangming is very involved in connected and automated vehicles at TxDOT. In fact, he is the main man when it comes to that. Now, several of us project managers are overseeing projects that are automated and connected. As I said, I have a project. Actually, it was a 3-phase project. And it's just going to go into phase 3, and it is a automated connected transit to deal with pedestrians and cyclists. And they've developed an algorithm. They've even developed an app. My phone's charging. And anyway, they developed an app for the phone that will even be able to, tell you, a bus is coming, or, don't cross. I'm making it very simplistic, but it will be able to tell you when a bus is turning. It will be able to let the bus driver know. You've seen probably those systems where a bus driver will get like a red or yellow beep or flashing signal that says, there's a pedestrian there. So yes, we are going forward with that. To make a short answer long.
In terms of the problem statements, how long are the problem statements? I'm just trying to get a level of effort. So it sounds like, if a researcher comes up with an idea, submits the problem statement, goes through the process, somebody's developing the RFP? Is it the subject matter experts?
The development of the RFP?
Yeah,
Well,
trying to get an idea of length of those.
Okay, well, let me, again, this is the story. In a problem statement, when they submit the form, it's got the name of the person that submits the form, it's got the text.champion, it's got an estimated length of a project, it's got an estimated budget. And I am telling you, sometimes it amazes me, the concept for money that they think, well, this project's going to cost like $4 million a year because we've got to do all these surveys. Well, it's not going to cost $4 million a year. It might not even cost $400,000 a year. But the point is that, as I mentioned earlier, I specifically, and just so you know, when it comes to the RFPs, I personally take all of the information. When a project is approved to go to an RFP stage, I personally take the information from the problem statement and transfer it to the project statement form. And it doesn't contain, the project statement does not contain all the information contained in the problem statement, like, expected value, or what's going to happen, the implications if this research isn't done, or it's something like that. It just basically says, this is the problem, this is how we intend to solve it. It can either be narrative, paragraph, or it can be in steps. And these are the deliverables that we're going to get. And then we have the research. I'm gonna actually show y'all something. I think actually I can't access my T drive because I don't have my VPN set up. But if you could see that, you would see the difference between a problem statement and a project statement. So the project statement will not include the name of the person that wrote the that developed the problem, and it won't include a budget or timeline. And as I said, I don't want to get 6 proposals that all say, $240,000 budget, 2-year project. I want to see what those people have, and boy, do I see variation. I definitely do.
That's very easy to find out, right? Because you have the pre-proposal meeting.
Yes.
And they discuss the problem statement. If somebody presents
No,
themselves.
we discussed the project statement, not the problem statement. We've gone from problem statement to project
Oh,
statement.
and then-
so the
okay.
RFP is only the project statement.
Yeah, RFP is that, but you have 7 steps, right? And
Yes.
For the first,
Oh,
second,
yeah.
or some
Oh, sure,
steps.
sure. For the people that have been involved in the process, yeah. If I develop problem statement X
Mhm.
and it goes forward, sure, I know what it is, but do you think I'm going to tell the other proposers what it's going to be? I don't want to give away any trade secrets.
No, I mean, other proposals may know who wrote the problem statement.
And they just might. But once they once we have that pre-proposal meeting, once the RFP goes out, they can't ask the TxDOT folks any questions. They can only go in writing. And if they do ask again, what's the budget, what's the project duration, we're going to say, we're not going to tell you, that's up to you.
Yeah.
So how does it fly with researchers that submit an idea and then don't get the project?
Oh, we hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's, some of it, honestly, some of it, I use the word sad. It does bother me in a way. There are folks that I think, that some universities that I think are very deserving, but during the evaluation process, we TxDOT folks, outside of the subject matter experts, we are completely out of that process. We don't talk to we also don't talk to the evaluators except to say, hey, the deadline is here, we need your scores. So we don't deal with them. It's not till we actually get the scores in, Kevin, the portfolio manager, until Kevin and I receive until we actually get the scores and Kevin totals up everything, and then he and I, you'd be surprised how it works, but then Kevin and I look at the numbers and then we make the decision from there. Or if something doesn't look right, if one university got a higher score than the other, but there were person A, B, C, and D, and person D gave one university 40 points higher than the other university when the others just had a few points difference. It's like, why did you do that? And so we want to talk to these folks and we want to say, hey guys, or not guys, why did you do this? We want to know why you scored it the way you did, and then they'll tell us. And then they might say, oh, well, I still hold by that, or, well, having had the discussion that we just talked about now concerning that perhaps I did, it shouldn't have been such a big point differential. But we like to we do like to have those things squared away. So in the event where we have, as I said, where the scores are really close, we will call the panel, we will get them together by phone, and we will ask them, what gives, what's happening here, and then I poll each panel member. We poll each panel member and ask, which university do you select?
I think that happens a lot. In the cooperative research program, it's the same thing. You submit the problem statement.
Yeah, I kind of get it at the CRP level,
Yeah.
but
But you mean the state level?
yeah, at the state level, and it's probably true here too, because Florida DOT doesn't put all of their proposals out. They sole source often a little bit, but they do put some out
Interesting.
for Florida only universities.
We only sole source implementation projects. We do not sole source research projects. So it stands to reason that we sole source implementation projects. If CTR did this project, it only stands to reason they should do the implementation. So yeah, and we do get the issues resolved. And the other thing is that after we've gone through the evaluation process and the projects have been awarded, every university, they get a copy of the comments, the reviewers' comments for their universities. If they want to find out what happened with the other universities, comments for the other universities, they can always do an open records request.
I'm sorry, but how about risk? Associated, some projects are probably, the nature of research is to take chances in research. And you get some, like you pointed out here, that pay off. But
Yeah.
there'll be others that didn't work.
And we've had that, and we've had those situations before
You
too.
try to take into account, we need to be strict, if you want to be an early adopter, I guess, and that sort of thing, so you have to take some chances, right?
Yes, and we've had situations with researchers where they've done work and it didn't pan out. In fact, one year, it didn't pan out for one researcher on 2 projects that I was the project manager for, and that wasn't fun trying to explain to our committee why that didn't happen, but it was what it was. But still, that did not preclude him from being able to bid or to be able to submit a proposal for another project. TxDOT does run at what I would call a very even-handed, if you will, a very even-handed research program. The only time we don't allow somebody to write a proposal or to even be part of that research team is if they haven't turned in their deliverables on time. If they're late, and when I mean on time, I'm talking about seriously late, like 60 days late. That kind of late. And you're knocking on their door and saying, send me your research report. send me a research report, and they don't turn it in, well, they are not eligible. They are not eligible from a certain date. They're not eligible not only to not propose, but they can't even be a researcher on that research team.
Okay,
Hey, you guys were quiet.
But they are absorbing the information,
Yeah.
so I think this is very informative. Although we hope that Texas could be more open, but let's see. Maybe we can convince Florida to be more closed,
Yeah.
like the other way, but
Wait,
anyway, I think
let me-
collaboration will always
Let
be
me see.
good.
Wait,
We're gonna have to talk to Florida DOT.
Yeah,
about
definitely.
all the Texas
I can see,
Yeah, you-
I can see the proposal coming.
Reciprocal.
I can see the proposal coming in. University of Texas at Tampa?
Okay, but I want to thank again for the way to be here and they deliver